You're listening to Level Up with Melissa Zalouf from Iron Source.
Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Level Up, the podcast for people who love making, growing, and of course, playing mobile games. I'm Melissa Zalouf, and joining me on today's episode is Oliver Kern, who's Chief Commercial Officer at Lockwood Publishing. Lockwood are behind the hugely successful mobile game Avakin Life, and we'll be discussing the challenges of building a virtual world game. How exactly do you integrate a music concept from a real-life pop star into a mobile game? The metaverse, because why not? And games as the new social media. So that's quite a docket to get through. Oliver, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So you know what? To start things off, maybe tell us a little bit about your personal journey in the game industry and how you ended up at Lockwood.
Yeah. So many moons ago, I started working in the games industry, and we were basically distributing shareware on the internet. So I worked for a company called Oberon Media, and we were basically, selling Bejeweled and hidden object games and all these kind of lovely things for $20. We had distribution partners like MSN and Yahoo, and users were able to then download an app or a game, play it for 1 hour for free, and then could decide if they wanted to buy that or not. And it was definitely a golden age for casual games. That's actually when the term came up the first time, I think. Because already then there were obviously console games and these kind of things, but those kind of casual games for everybody, that was kind of the years 2005 to 2008 when it really started. That was pre-Facebook, when those kind of games started to take off. I then joined Jagex, a big MMO publisher and developer, and worked as CMO there, helping them to grow RuneScape. Did that for a while, and then had a few episodes in like ad networks, etc. But publishing and marketing of games, that's really what I enjoy the most. That brought me to Lockwood, which I started working with about 5 years ago, when it was very, very small, making no money, just a few people. And it's been an incredible journey.
And what does the day-to-day of your job kind of look like?
Well, I'm now responsible for ultimately helping with everything that is around growth. So that means marketing and user acquisition, but it also means, because we are this virtual world / social network, being big in the different markets. So we do try to take much more of a market by market approach, and actually have partners in key regions that I'm building out, and then also community management, because I believe that users can be the best ambassadors and the best marketers for a game.
So tell us about Avakin Life. For those who aren't familiar with it, what is it? Who plays it? What's the experience like?
Well, it's a huge virtual world. We've grown from literally close to nothing to now about 1.5 million daily active users. It's, people come in there, they are able to meet other people, and are able to kind of, we call it kind of express themselves. So, we have a huge inventory of fashion items and clothes and dance moves and all these kind of things, as well as, apartments and houses that you can buy and decorate, and really, again, express yourself in a very creative way.
And what does the average player of Avakin like? What is the average player of Avakin Life like? Mouthful.
I would say it's probably a female somewhere between 18 and 30. That's kind of really our core demographic. We've done a lot of research around our user base, We have a good understanding who of them really care about like fashion, who of them care about like decoration and design and these kind of things, who of them care about um, uh, meeting other people, etc. So yeah, but that's really kind of female, 18 to 30, interested in other people, interested in expressing themselves in a creative way.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned your amazing growth. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got from, because also this sort of covers your time at Lockwood, how you got from close to nothing to over 1 million DAUs?
Um, I think the magic sits somewhere in the the building the community. I think that's really what matters for us. And if you look at a lot of the top games out there, those that have longevity will have a huge community around them, and it's something that kind of builds and builds over time. It's not these kind of quick up there in the charts and then kind of dying very quickly. It's these games that basically have a stay for a long time because you're able to really have this community that kind of sticks with the game. And we have still players that joined Avakin in 2000, end of 2013, so right at the very, very beginning, and they still play it and they still come back to it, especially when we have like big events, etc. So it is really capturing a community. Really, that's what makes it grow. And we were fortunate enough that we were, when we launched it, kind of in a position where there was not really a lot of competition. A lot of our users, especially in the beginning, came in there and thought like, "Oh, this is like The Sims, but with
Mhm.
real people," and that's kind of what really made the difference for them.
And what are some of the ways that you build community?
You build community by listening to them, taking them serious, and incorporating their feedback, what they care about, and kind of building a game for them. Because for us, we do treat our game much more as a service in general, which does mean that we're doing this for them and not for ourselves. We're creating an environment, a world for our users. So that's why we have to carefully listen to what they care about and make sure that we respectfully do the things maybe not exactly like they wish, but trying to understand like what are their underlying motivations. That's why we also invest a lot in research to kind of really make sure that we provide a service that they really enjoy for the long term.
Hmm. And what are some of you've mentioned that for users at the beginning it was like The Sims but with real people. What are some of the unique challenges of building a mobile social simulation game?
There are lots of challenges around that. Challenge number one is when you start growing and you start growing quickly, all you can focus on is just, making sure that it kind of holds, it doesn't fall apart, that the people come in there and it doesn't break. And, if you have a very, very small team, those are kind of certainly some of the key challenges. I mean, we launched in 2013 when like 3G was a big thing. And we were providing a real-time multiplayer game. That still today is not easy to do. But back then it was definitely quite ambitious to do that. So it also has a lot to do with that for sure. And then it's you have to kind of find that balance, because we do provide a virtual world where everybody can be whoever they want to be in a way, but you have to also set some boundaries. I think you can't make it too crazy, so to say, because then it loses its attachment to the real world. I would think. So you have to kind of also see where are the boundaries. What do we not want, if that makes sense.
This makes me think of an interesting question. What's a good example of something that is on the edge? I mean, this idea of being attached to reality, but also far enough from reality that you can kind of express yourself in ways that perhaps aren't available to you in the real world. What's an example of one of those cases where, okay, this takes us too far from reality versus sort of keeping us just far enough?
Yeah, I think you always have to kind of provide the right context. I do think there a lot is possible, but if we provide these social spaces where people can come in, and that kind of, in my opinion at least, kind of sets the tone for what should be allowed and what should not be allowed, right? I mean, if you're going into a cafe in somewhere in New York to kind of work as a barista and earn some coins, it would be weird if there were some super fantasy style kind of people flying around and doing magic, as an example, right? It would just feel wrong, and especially as a new user, you would think like, what is going on here, right? If the context was different and you were in some kind of castle and everything would be a little bit more magical and fantasy style, yeah, then obviously you can also allow other things. And again, somebody in a barista apron would somehow feel wrong. So I think you have to always look at the backdrop and the context and say what should be okay in this environment.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about this idea of personal expression and avatars specifically. So, how important is that sense of agency in virtual worlds? And where do you sort of peg the industry today in terms of how sophisticated these avatars were able to make these avatars?
Um, Yeah, I think it really depends. I mean, I remember when I was working at Jagex with RuneScape. I mean, we also did like a big upgrade of the game, and all the characters looked better and all these kind of things. But it didn't really make a massive impact because the game was not about your avatar. In Avakin and in kind of real world simulations, I think the avatar is obviously much more important. And it is, people usually come in there and they try to create a version of themselves or a version of some celebrity, basically. So you have to kind of be able to cater for that if you want to make it real life. A lot of virtual worlds and avatar scenarios are a bit more, comic-like. And there, obviously, it doesn't really matter as much. You basically create something that you feel is kind of nice and cool. But especially with a game like ours, people invest a lot of time to kind of really create a great version of themselves, and we provide them, the ability to do that. So for us, the avatar is super, super important, because it also is also, a signal to others, and in like a multiplayer environment, how you look and what you wear and all these kind of things, gives other players immediately an idea, is this somebody I want to talk to or not, right? You don't even need to say, hey, how are you? Already just from the look and how somebody kind of is, you already have an idea of like, okay, is this somebody that I'm interested talking to or not?
Much like the real world.
Much like the real world, absolutely. I mean, if you come into a pub or a cafe and you wear certain things, you have a certain look, people will immediately feel like, okay, this person fits in here. I want to have a chat with that person, or oh, this feels really wrong.
Mhm. Let's move to talking about the buzzword, well, one of the buzzwords du jour, the metaverse. Games like Fortnite they're sort of described as platforms in or into the metaverse. The idea is that eventually we'll have sort of fully functioning digital economies. We'll be able to host experiences like virtual concerts and movie premieres. Is the idea, obviously this intersects with what you guys are doing at Lockwood, is that something that you are actively discussing? And if so, how does that sort of impact how you're looking at your future trajectory?
I mean, for us, this aspect is definitely also quite important. We do look at that as well. At the end of the day, you can only to a certain degree answer all the needs of the users in terms of their wishes, what they want, and what they want to have or kind of recreate, etc. So I do believe that like a digital economy where also the users can probably create a lot of the content is definitely a route also for us that we're exploring and looking at. I think the having that kind of platform, I don't think there will be like one company that kind of has it all. I do think it will need to be something that allows lots of different companies with lots of different experiences to kind of plug in. So think of it almost like APIs in some way. I think that's probably something that I would see as kind of the metaverse. I think where it's if it's one company and this is you everywhere, I'm not so sure that that will work. I don't think people will even like that.
Mm. And what about live events, which we've sort of touched on? Tell us about how you guys tackle that at Lockwood. You had Hayley Kiyoko's live concert.
Mhm.
So that's a sort of something, well, you can sort of tell us what are their challenges, what are the challenges, um, and how are you guys looking to create more of those experiences and monetize them down the line?
Yeah, so yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, obviously music and dance and these kind of things are maybe not for every audience the right thing, but definitely if you're talking like a younger audience, and that's why also Fortnite has been quite successful there. But equally for us, this is definitely something that the audience enjoys. And we know that our audience cares about music, they care about dancing and kind of everything around that. So we basically, in the with Hayley Kyoko's concert, we basically worked with Warner Music to kind of create like a digital concert, and that was pre-COVID. So back then, it wasn't even such a thing where musicians thought like, how else can I kind of create visibility for an audience? Um,
Is that something you guys are trying to ramp up a lot more of now that we are all in sort of less going out less, let's put it that way, depending on obviously which country you're in and what the situation is?
Yeah, I mean, we have that concert. That was kind of the first of its kind in that sense. That was last year, I think September or no October. But since then, we've actually done quite a few more um, with all sorts of artists, DJs, etc. And it's been quite interesting. And I think the key learning for us is the artist really needs to be super excited about the opportunity. It's not that the label who is pushing for an additional revenue stream or something like that. It needs to be also the artist that is excited about that. Because for us as a game, the benefit is if we can tap into the artist's audience to a degree. So almost as them as an influencer, so to say. We create obviously the experience, and it's great for our users. They will enjoy that. They will love that we do something special, etc. But it's also for us as a business, it's obviously also interesting to see if we can tap into the audience of the artist, and that only works if the artist is also really excited about it.
So are live events for you more about, let's call it live ops, or are they more about growth?
Well, it's a mix of that, I would say. It's on the one hand, it is live ops. It is, offering the users something fresh every day. And in that sense, we have lots of events and music events, or we also have a tie-in with World of Dance. So, dance-related events, those kind of things definitely play a good role, because then there is always a reason to come back into the game. There is something new, something different, something to participate in, etc. So that's really cool. But we also do try to see like how can we activate our existing community so that they basically create amazing content. And they've done that, for example, with World of Dance, where they created I think 20,000 or something like that videos around a certain dance style, where we basically had like competitions on social media. And equally, we obviously always also hope, if it's especially around music, that kind of the artist also is proud to be in a game, and then kind of shares that with their respective audience, right? So that's kind of really also important for us. So it is a mix of both of those things.
It's actually a nice segue to talking about games and social media. Games are the new social media, which is sort of an idea which has been floating around for a while. Do you think that's true? Also, do you consider, you've said twice now, perhaps more, I'm not keeping an actual score, you've spoken about Avakin Life as a game. Do you also consider it to be sort of a social network? And do you think we're going to see um, a new generation of users who are more engaged in games because of the social elements than the now I understand these two can be sort of inextricably linked, but more because of the social elements than the game elements.
I mean, I've worked in the MMO space, and already there I saw that games are in a way a social network there. That's what kept and still keeps those MMOs very very attractive, because it is the communities that sit in these games that actually make them be meaningful for decades, right? I mean, RuneScape has been around now, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years. World of Warcraft, same. And it is because real people are in there, and because they are able to communicate with each other. They build kind of friendships, they build clans and guilds and all these kind of things. So in that sense, I think, games have always been, uh, or some games have always been like social media. And definitely, if you look at Roblox, Fortnite, many other games where communities stick around, and you play with your friends for a very long time, that is in a way a social media platform, and definitely is competition to the Facebooks and Instagrams of the world. Now, many of those games have predominantly been like in more in the male arena, I would say. And a game like Avakin definitely attracts a female audience, and Roblox probably more kind of kids and early teenagers. So yeah, I think you have to kind of find your different places, but they're definitely very much social media platforms. Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, you sort of said they compete with Facebook, etc. Do you think we're going to see a shift away from quote unquote traditional social media platforms towards games, or are they offering sort of distinct experiences?
I think they offer distinct experiences, but in essence, they are competition. I mean, Avec in Life, we have average playtime per user per day is more than an hour. So then you are competing with even with Netflix, but as well as with every social media platform, for sure.
There has been for a while a lot of talk, and I think that we can see kind of the mainstream catch up with this talk that gaming is not now that old stereotype of gamers being bearded young men in their garages. It's just not the case, not anymore, and probably not for a long time. Everyone today is a gamer. What do you think the sort of convergence between gaming and social, which you say has been around for a while, but probably has seen an uptick in the last few years? What do you think that says about consumer preferences, and around what we expect from our online experiences, whether that's sort of something that crosses entertainment and or social and gaming?
Ooh, that's a difficult question. I
It
wish I
often
would know the answer.
bad at that.
Yeah,
I'm being to the
I
point.
think yeah, I do think that people come to games because and start playing games because core the game itself, right? And then they kind of discover kind of the social part of it, and it's not necessarily the other way around. Whereas social networks, they just have like the social component really, and that's kind of it. So you obviously also have much more people that you have a more diverse range of like interests, I would say, and probably also, they might easily kind of just not be interested in any kind of conversation with you. It's harder to find a trigger. In games, it's easy to kind of find a trigger to start talking about something. And I do feel like people that are maybe a little bit more shy have it easier when there is a common theme to talk about, I think. Whereas if you're a social butterfly, you basically just go in there and kind of just talk with whoever. But that's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people are a bit more hesitant. I think in games, especially, the big difference is also that you don't have to be. You're not
yourself.
necessarily. Sorry, I think the big difference in games is also that you don't necessarily have to be exactly yourself. So if you post pictures on Instagram of yourself and people hate it or kind of flame you for that, then you're basically done. All right. Whereas in a game, you can always experiment with who you actually are and who you want to be. And what matters is then really kind of how you interact with others and what you actually say, and not necessarily how you look, and not necessarily what kind of clothes you're wearing and all these kind of things.
In some ways, it's almost as though games, as this sort of new social network, in some ways, right the ills of traditional social networks. It isn't, you're not. I mean, I'm sure there's probably cyberbullying going on inside games as well, potentially. The truth is, I don't know for sure,
Oh,
but
for sure.
there is.
And you have a big responsibility, I think, as a publisher to kind of really keep a community safe and secure. That goes without saying. We
Yeah.
definitely also, as many others, we put a lot of effort into kind of keeping a community safe. Yeah.
Right. But there is something sort of uh, freeing about being able to be social with others without it needing to require such a sort of in-depth look at your own personal real life and putting yourself at risk that way.
Yeah, I think you don't have to fake yourself, Um,
Right. And intriguing. Well, Oliver, thank you very much for being on the show today. I've sort of come away now thinking maybe I should be creating an avatar of myself and in exploring self-expression that way. But it's been a super, super interesting episode. Thank you very much for coming on today.
yeah, thank you for having me.